Jason lived in a small, quiet town where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. His days were predictable: wake up early, go to school, work part-time at the local diner after classes, and then head home to help his mom with chores. Life wasn't easy for Jason or his family. They didn't have much money, but they made do with what little they had. Despite their struggles, Jason always tried to stay cheerful. He believed that good things would come eventually if he worked hard enough. Kenter. This particular evening, the sky was overcast and heavy rain clouds loomed overhead. By the time Jason finished his shift at the diner, it was pouring outside. He pulled his hood up, tightened the straps on his backpack, and stepped out into the storm. The streets were empty except for the occasional car splashing through puddles. Jason didn't mind the rain. He found it soothing somehow. It drowned out the noise of the world and gave him space to think about his dreams. As Jason walked past the park, a place he often cut through to get home faster, he noticed something strange under the dim streetlights. At first glance, it looked like a pile of clothes discarded carelessly on the wet ground, but as he got closer, his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't clothes. It was a person lying there, unmoving. Jason hesitated for a moment. Should he check? What if it was just someone sleeping, or worse, what if it was dangerous? But then he saw her hand twitch slightly, and he knew he couldn't ignore it. He jogged over, his sneakers squelching in the mud, and knelt beside her. The woman was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered against her face. She was clutching her stomach tightly, her breathing shallow and uneven. Jason's eyes widened when he realized she was pregnant. Her swollen belly told him everything he needed to know. Panic set in. Was she okay? Was the baby safe? "Hey," Jason said softly, trying not to startle her. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman groaned weakly and nodded, though she didn't say anything. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the strength. Jason felt a surge of determination. He couldn't leave her here like this. Without wasting another second, Jason took off his hoodie and draped it over her shivering body. "I'm going to call an ambulance," he told her firmly, pulling out his phone. His hands shook as he dialed the emergency number, but he managed to explain the situation clearly. The operator assured him help was on the way. While waiting, Jason stayed by her side, holding her hand gently. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, more to reassure himself than her. "Just hang in there." The minutes felt like hours as the rain continued to pour down relentlessly. Jason shielded the woman from the worst of it, using his own body to block the wind. He could feel her trembling beneath his touch, and it broke his heart. Who was she? How had she ended up here alone in such terrible weather? Finally, the sound of sirens pierced through the night. Paramedics arrived quickly, rushing to the scene with bright flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jason stepped back to let them take over, watching anxiously as they loaded the woman onto a stretcher and carried her to the ambulance. One of the paramedics turned to him before leaving. "You did the right thing, kid," the man said, giving Jason a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "She's lucky you were here." Jason nodded silently, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. As the ambulance sped away, he realized he hadn't even asked her name. For all he knew, she could have been anyone, a stranger passing through town, a neighbor he'd never met, or someone completely unexpected. Shivering now from the cold and soaked to the skin, Jason trudged home, replaying the events in his mind. Had he really saved someone tonight? Would she be okay? And most importantly, why had fate chosen him to be there at that exact moment? Little did Jason know, the answers to these questions would change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. What started as a simple act of kindness on a rainy evening would soon lead him down a path filled with surprises, challenges, and opportunities beyond his wildest dreams. For now, though, Jason simply crawled into bed, exhausted, but unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman's pale face and the gratitude in her eyes as he promised to stay with her until help arrived. Deep down, he hoped she'd pull through. Not just for her sake, but for the sake of the tiny life growing inside her. And somewhere far away, in a luxurious mansion surrounded by security guards and staff, a man named Victor Langston sat anxiously by the phone, waiting for news about his wife. When the call finally came, informing him that Emily had been found and was being treated at the hospital, he breathed a sigh of relief. But what he didn't know yet was that a poor teenage boy from a small town had played a crucial role in saving her life, and that their paths were destined to cross very soon. The next morning, Jason woke up feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. His clothes were still damp from the rain, and his muscles ached from staying crouched beside the woman for so long. But despite his exhaustion, his mind kept replaying the events of the previous night. Who was she? Was she okay? And what about the baby? These questions swirled in his head as he forced himself out of bed to get ready for school. Jason's mom noticed something was off the moment he walked into the kitchen. "You look tired," she said, setting a plate of toast on the table. "Everything all right?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Jason replied quickly, not wanting to worry her. He hesitated for a second before adding, "I just helped someone last night." His mom raised an eyebrow. "Helped someone? What do you mean?" Jason explained how he'd found the pregnant woman lying in the park during the storm and called an ambulance for her. As he spoke, he saw a mix of pride and concern flicker across his mom's face. "That was brave of you," she said softly. "But you should have told me earlier. You could have caught a cold out there." "I'm okay, Mom," Jason assured her, though he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he should have done more. He wanted to know if the woman was safe, but he didn't even know her name or which hospital she'd been taken to. Later that day, while working his shift at the diner, Jason couldn't focus. Every time the doorbell rang, he glanced up, half expecting to see someone walk in with news about the woman. But no one came. By the end of his shift, he felt restless and decided to visit the local hospital after work. When Jason arrived, the receptionist at the front desk looked confused by his request. "Do you know her name?" she asked, typing something into the computer. "No," Jason admitted. "But she's pregnant and she came in last night." The receptionist frowned. "We can't release patient information without proper authorization. Are you family?" Jason shook his head. "No, I'm just the guy who called the ambulance." The receptionist gave him a sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry, but we can't help you unless you're related or have permission from the patient." Disappointed, Jason thanked her and turned to leave. Just as he reached the exit, a deep voice stopped him. "Excuse me, are you the boy who saved my wife?" Jason spun around to see a tall, well-dressed man standing behind him. The man radiated authority, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He wore an expensive suit, and two burly security guards stood nearby watching silently. "Yes," Jason stammered, suddenly feeling nervous. "I mean, I don't know if I really saved her, but I called for help when I found her." In the park, the man stepped closer, extending his hand. "My name is Victor Langston. That woman, the one you helped, is my wife, Emily. Thank you for saving her life." Jason blinked in shock. This man was Victor Langston, the billionaire whose name appeared in newspapers and TV shows all the time. Jason had heard stories about him, how he'd built a massive business empire, owned luxury properties worldwide, and donated millions to charity. "You're thanking me?" Jason managed to say, shaking Victor's hand awkwardly. Victor nodded. "If it weren't for you, my wife might not have made it. She went into early labor last night, and the doctors said she needed immediate medical attention. Because of your quick thinking, both Emily and our unborn child are safe." Jason felt a lump form in his throat. "I'm glad she's okay," he murmured. "Really, I just did what anyone would have done." Victor studied him intently, his expression softening. "Not everyone would have gone out of their way to help a stranger in the middle of a storm. You showed courage and compassion, qualities that are rare these days." Before Jason could respond, Victor gestured toward the waiting area. "Come, let's talk somewhere more comfortable." They sat down in a quiet corner of the hospital lobby, away from prying eyes. Victor introduced himself again. explaining that he and Emily had been driving home from a dinner party when their car broke down near the park. While waiting for roadside assistance, Emily began experiencing severe pain and collapsed. She insisted I stay with the car to make sure nothing happened to it, Victor said, shaking his head. She's always putting others first, even when she's in trouble herself. Jason listened quietly, amazed by the story. Is she doing better now? He asked. Victor smiled faintly. Yes, thanks to you. She's resting, and the doctors are monitoring her closely, but I owe you more than words can express. Jason shifted uncomfortably. You don't owe me anything. Like I said, I only did what anyone else would have done. Victor leaned forward, his tone serious. Nonsense. Acts of kindness deserve recognition. Tell me, what can I do to repay you? Money? A job? Anything you need? Consider it done. Jason's cheeks flushed red. No, really, I don't want anything. I'm just glad I could help. Victor seemed impressed by Jason's humility. Very well, but let me at least give you my contact information. If you ever need anything at all, you call me. Understand? Jason hesitated but eventually accepted Victor's business card. As they parted ways, Victor promised to keep Jason updated on Emily's condition. Over the next few days, Jason tried to return to his normal routine, but he couldn't stop thinking about the Langstons. He wondered how Emily was feeling and whether the baby was healthy. To his surprise, Victor called him personally a few days later to thank him again and invite him to visit their mansion once Emily was discharged from the hospital. At first, Jason thought it was a joke. Why would a billionaire invite someone like him into their home? But Victor sounded sincere, and Jason reluctantly agreed. After all, he was curious to meet Emily and learn more about the family he'd unknowingly become connected to. On the day of the visit, Jason dressed in his best clothes, a pair of clean jeans and a button-up shirt borrowed from his older cousin. When a sleek black car pulled up outside his house, he almost backed out. What was he doing here? He didn't belong in a world like this. But then the driver opened the door for him and Jason climbed inside, feeling like he'd stepped into a movie. The ride to the Langstons' mansion was surreal. Towering gates opened automatically, revealing sprawling gardens and a grand estate that looked straight out of a fairy tale. When Jason stepped out of the car, Victor greeted him warmly, leading him inside. The interior of the mansion was breathtaking, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork lining the walls. Despite its opulence, the atmosphere felt welcoming, not intimidating. Emily joined them shortly afterward, looking much healthier than she had that fateful night. Her smile lit up the room as she hugged Jason tightly. I'll never forget what you did for me, she said, tears glistening in her eyes. You saved not just me, but our baby too. Jason felt overwhelmed by her gratitude. It was nothing, he mumbled, though his heart swelled with emotion. As the afternoon went on, Victor and Emily treated Jason like part of their family. They shared stories about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams for the future. For the first time in years, Jason felt truly seen and valued, not because of what he owned or where he came from, but because of who he was. By the time he left the mansion that evening, Jason knew his life had changed forever. Little did he realize, however, that this was only the beginning of an incredible journey, one that would test his strength, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately lead him to discover his true purpose. Jason couldn't stop thinking about the Langstons' mansion long after his visit. The grandeur of their home, the warmth of their hospitality, and the genuine gratitude they showed him left a deep impression on him. But what stayed with him most was the sense that he'd stumbled into something far bigger than himself. He wasn't used to being around people like Victor and Emily, people who had everything yet treated him with kindness and respect. It made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, life had more in store for him than working at the diner and struggling to make ends meet. A few days later, Jason received another call from Victor. This time it wasn't just a casual check-in, it was an invitation to dinner at the mansion. At first, Jason hesitated. He felt out of place among the wealthy elite, unsure if he belonged in such luxurious surroundings. But Victor insisted, saying, "We'd love to have you over again. You're practically family now, family." That word resonated deeply with Jason. Growing up, his own family had always been close-knit but financially strained. They cared for each other fiercely, but opportunities were scarce. Being welcomed into the Langstons' world felt surreal, almost like stepping into a dream. When the day of the dinner arrived, Jason dressed carefully, borrowing his cousin's suit jacket once again. As the car pulled up to the mansion, he took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm. Inside, Victor and Emily greeted him warmly, as though he were an old friend returning from a long trip. The evening began with light conversation over appetizers. Victor asked Jason about school, his interests, and his plans for the future. Jason admitted he wanted to go to college someday but doubted it would ever happen. His family couldn't afford tuition, and scholarships were competitive. Victor listened, intently, nodding thoughtfully. When Jason finished speaking, Victor leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, education is one of the greatest investments anyone can make, not just for yourself, but for society as a whole. If you're serious about going to college, I'd be honored to help." Jason froze, unsure he'd heard correctly. "Help? How?" "I'll sponsor your education," Victor replied simply, as though offering to buy someone coffee. "Any university you choose, any program you want to pursue. I'll cover the costs." For a moment, Jason couldn't speak. His mind raced with disbelief. Was this really happening? Was Victor Langston, one of the richest men in the country, offering to pay for his college education? "Why would you do that?" Jason finally managed to ask, his voice trembling slightly. Victor smiled. "Because you remind me of myself when I was younger. Hardworking, humble, and determined. And because you saved my wife and child without expecting anything in return. I believe in rewarding good character." Emily chimed in, her eyes shining with emotion. "Jason, we've talked about this a lot. We see so much potential in you. Please don't turn down this opportunity. It's not charity. It's an investment in your future." Tears welled up in Jason's eyes, but he blinked them away quickly. He didn't want to cry in front of the Langstons, especially not over something so incredible. Instead, he nodded slowly, accepting their offer. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Over the next few months, Jason threw himself into preparing for college. With Victor's support, he applied to several universities, eventually earning acceptance into a prestigious engineering program. It was a field he'd always been passionate about, though he'd never imagined he'd actually get the chance to study it. On moving day, Victor sent a car to pick Jason up and drive him to campus. The transition wasn't easy. Jason found himself surrounded by students whose lives seemed worlds apart from his own. Many of them came from wealthy families, wore designer clothes, and drove expensive cars. Meanwhile, Jason lived frugally, sticking to a budget and working part-time jobs to cover his personal expenses. At first, he felt out of place, like he didn't belong. Some classmates assumed he was there on a sports scholarship or joked about his rags-to-riches story. But Jason refused to let their comments bother him. He focused on his studies, determined to prove himself through hard work and dedication. Despite the challenges, Jason thrived academically. His professors praised his creativity and problem-solving skills, often encouraging him to aim higher. Outside of class, he joined clubs and organizations, volunteering his time to mentor underprivileged kids and give back to the community. Inspired by Victor's generosity, Jason vowed to use his education to create opportunities for others like him. Throughout his college years, Victor and Emily remained a constant presence in Jason's life. They invited him to holidays at the mansion, celebrated his achievements, and offered guidance whenever he needed it. To Jason, they weren't just benefactors, they were family. One summer, during a break from school, Jason visited the mansion again. By now, Emily had given birth to twin girls whom she affectionately called her little miracles. Watching Victor dote on his daughters filled Jason with a sense of hope. For the first time, he allowed himself to dream about having a family of his own someday, a family built on love, kindness, and mutual respect. But Jason also noticed subtle changes in Victor. The billionaire, once larger than life and seemingly invincible, appeared more reflective these days. During quiet moments, Jason caught glimpses of vulnerability in Victor's eyes. One evening, as they sat together on the patio overlooking the garden, Victor spoke openly about his fears and regrets. "You know, Jason," he began, swirling a glass of wine in his hand, "money doesn't solve everything. I've spent my life chasing success, building empires, and accumulating wealth. But none of it matters if you don't have people you care about, and who care about you." Jason nodded, understanding exactly what Victor meant. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they shared a common desire: to leave a positive mark on the world. "That's why I admire you so much," Victor continued. "You've got a good heart. Don't lose that, no matter where life takes you." By the time Jason graduated from college, he'd already developed a reputation as a rising star in the engineering field. With Victor's connections, he secured internships at top companies and worked on groundbreaking projects that pushed the boundaries of innovation. But Jason's ambitions went beyond climbing the corporate ladder. He dreamed of starting his own company, a venture dedicated to improving access to education and technology for underprivileged communities. He pitched his idea to Victor, who immediately offered to invest. "Your vision aligns perfectly with mine," Victor said proudly. "Let's change the world together." With Victor's backing, Jason launched his company shortly after graduation. It started small, focusing on providing affordable laptops and internet access to low-income schools. Over time, however, the business grew exponentially, earning recognition nationwide. Through it all, Jason never forgot where he came from, or the people who had helped him along the way. Every milestone he achieved felt like a testament to the power of kindness and generosity. And every time he visited the Langstons' mansion, he marveled at how fate had brought them together. What had started as a random act of kindness on a stormy night had blossomed into a lifelong bond that transcended wealth, status, and circumstance. Little did Jason realize, however, that the best chapter of his story was yet to come. One day, Victor would ask him to take on a role even greater than mentoring students or running a successful business. A role that would solidify his place in the Langston family forever. Jason's life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. From struggling to make ends meet in a small town to running his own successful company, he had come a long way. But success didn't change who he was at his core. Despite the accolades and opportunities that came his way, Jason remained grounded, humble, hard-working, and deeply grateful for everything the Langstons had done for him. Victor and Emily continued to be pillars of support, treating Jason like family. They celebrated his achievements as if they were their own, attending every award ceremony and product launch with pride. During holidays, Jason joined them at the mansion, where laughter filled the halls and the scent of home-cooked meals wafted through the air. The twins, now toddlers, adored Jason, often clinging to his legs and calling him Uncle Jay. But as much as Jason loved being part of the Langston family, adjusting to his new reality wasn't always easy. His rapid rise in the business world brought challenges he hadn't anticipated. For one thing, people treated him differently now. Colleagues who once dismissed him as the poor kid suddenly sought his advice or invited him to exclusive events. Investors courted him, hoping to partner with his growing company, and media outlets clamored for interviews, eager to tell the rags-to-riches story of the young entrepreneur who'd been mentored by none other than Victor Langston. At first, Jason struggled to navigate this unfamiliar landscape. He felt out of place among CEOs and industry leaders, many of whom seemed more interested in profit margins than making a difference. But over time, he learned to hold his ground. He stayed true to his values, refusing to compromise on his mission to help underprivileged communities. If anything, his experiences only strengthened his resolve. One day, during a meeting with potential investors, Jason found himself facing a difficult decision. A wealthy venture capitalist offered to fund his company, but with strings attached. The investor wanted Jason to shift his focus away from affordable education initiatives and instead develop high-end products aimed at elite markets. It's a smarter business move, the investor argued, leaning back in his chair. You'll see returns faster and your brand will skyrocket. Jason hesitated. On paper, the offer made sense. More funding meant faster growth, better resources, and greater visibility. But it also meant abandoning the very people he'd set out to help. The kids who couldn't afford laptops, the schools without internet access, the communities trapped in cycles of poverty. I appreciate the opportunity, Jason said finally, his voice steady. But my goal has always been to bridge the gap between privilege and disadvantage. I can't turn my back on that now. The investor frowned but didn't push further. As Jason left the room, he felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Turning down such a lucrative deal was risky, but he knew he'd made the right choice. Later that evening, Jason called Victor to share what had happened. To his surprise, Victor sounded proud rather than disappointed. You stood by your principles, Victor said warmly. That takes courage, especially in today's world. Trust me, Jason, you'll attract the right partners eventually. Those who truly believe in your vision will support you without asking you to compromise. Victor's words gave Jason hope. Over the next few months, he worked tirelessly to expand his company while staying true to its mission. Slowly but surely, he began attracting like-minded investors, people who shared his passion for creating equal opportunities for all. Together, they launched innovative programs designed to empower underserved communities, from coding workshops for children to digital literacy training for adults. As Jason thrived professionally, he also grew closer to the Langstons personally. Emily often joked that Jason was the glue holding their family together. Without you, we'd probably fall apart, she teased during one of their dinners. Jason laughed, though he knew there was truth in her words. Victor relied on Jason's insight when making business decisions, valuing his fresh perspective and moral compass. Meanwhile, Emily appreciated Jason's ability to connect with the twins who idolized him completely. They look up to you so much, Emily said one afternoon, watching as Jason played hide-and-seek with the girls in the garden. It's like having another dad around. Jason smiled, feeling a warm glow spread through his chest. Being part of the Langston family gave him a sense of belonging he'd never experienced before. Despite his successes, Jason sometimes wondered about his roots. He missed his mom and the simplicity of life in his hometown. Though he visited whenever he could, he worried that the distance might strain their relationship. One weekend, Jason decided to surprise his mom by showing up unannounced. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, tears welled up in her eyes. "Jason," she exclaimed, pulling him into a tight hug. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see you," Jason replied, hugging her back. "How have you been?" His mom led him inside, where they spent hours catching up. She told him about the neighbors, the local gossip, and how proud everyone was of him. "You've done so well for yourself," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I always knew you would." Jason felt a lump form in his throat. "None of it would have been possible without you, Mom. You taught me to work hard and never give up." His mom smiled, brushing away a tear. "And now look at you, helping others the way someone helped you." Her words struck a chord. Jason realized that his journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about paying forward the kindness and generosity he'd received. Back in the city, Jason threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. He expanded his company's reach, partnering with nonprofits and government agencies to bring technology and education to remote areas. Schools that once lacked basic supplies now had state-of-the-art classrooms thanks to his efforts. Communities that had been left behind were given tools to build brighter futures. But Jason's impact extended beyond his professional achievements. Inspired by Victor's example, he became a mentor to young entrepreneurs, sharing his story and offering guidance to those navigating similar paths. He believed strongly in lifting others up, knowing firsthand how transformative a helping hand could be. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jason sat alone in his office, reflecting on everything he'd accomplished. From rescuing a stranger in the rain to building a company that changed lives, his journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do. As he gazed out the window at the glittering city skyline, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Victor. "Dinner tomorrow night? There's something important we need to discuss." Jason's curiosity piqued. What could Victor possibly want to talk about? Whatever it was, he knew it would be significant. The next evening, Jason arrived at the mansion to find Victor and Emily waiting for him in the living room. Both looked unusually serious, which immediately put him on edge. "What's going on?" Jason asked, taking a seat across from them. Victor exchanged a glance with Emily before speaking. "We've been thinking about the future. Our family's future, and we'd like to ask you something." Jason leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Anything." Victor took a deep breath. "Emily and I want you to officially become part of our family, not just as a friend or protege, but as a guardian for the twins. We'd like you to be their godfather." For a moment, Jason couldn't breathe. He stared at them, stunned. Him? A godfather? But why me? He managed to stammer. "Because you embody everything we value," Emily explained gently. "Kindness, integrity, resilience. You've already done so much for us, and we trust you completely." Tears welled up in Jason's eyes as he nodded. "I'd be honored," he whispered, his voice breaking. Victor and Emily beamed, pulling him into a group hug. In that moment, Jason felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the Langstons, but for the twists of fate that had led him here. From rescuing a pregnant woman in the rain to becoming a beloved member of one of the wealthiest families in the country, Jason's life had taken incredible turns. And as he embraced his new role as godfather to the twins, he knew his journey was far from over. Little did he realize, however, that the greatest challenge and reward of his life was yet to come. Jason's role as godfather to the twins marked a new chapter in his life. It wasn't just a title. It was a responsibility that filled him with both pride and purpose. The Langstons trusted him implicitly, and Jason vowed to honor their faith by being the best mentor he could be for the girls. He spent countless weekends teaching them about kindness, resilience, and the importance of helping others. Whether it was reading bedtime stories, taking them to science museums, or volunteering together at local shelters, Jason poured his heart into shaping their young minds. But as much joy as the twins brought into his life, Jason couldn't ignore the challenges waiting ahead. Victor and Emily were getting older, and though they remained active and healthy, Jason knew their time together wouldn't last forever. One day he would have to step up even further, not only as a guardian but also as someone who carried forward the Langston legacy of generosity and impact. A few years passed, and Jason's company continued to grow. What had started as a small initiative aimed at providing affordable technology to underserved communities had blossomed into a global movement. Schools across continents benefited from his programs, and millions of children gained access to education they'd never dreamed possible. Journalists hailed him as a visionary leader, comparing him to tech pioneers like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. But Jason didn't care about fame or accolades. For him, success was measured by the smiles on children's faces when they opened their first laptop or logged onto the internet for the first time. During this period, Jason also deepened his ties with the Langstons. They celebrated milestones together, the twins' birthdays, graduations, and family vacations. Jason became a constant presence in their lives, offering advice and support whenever needed. When Victor faced health issues due to stress and age, Jason stepped in to help manage parts of his business empire. Though Victor initially resisted, fearing Jason might feel burdened, he soon realized how capable and dedicated Jason truly was. "You remind me so much of myself when I was younger," Victor said one evening as they sat in the study, surrounded by books and papers. "Except you're wiser. You balance ambition with compassion in ways I never did." Jason smiled humbly. "I learned from the best," he replied, gesturing toward Victor. Victor chuckled softly. Maybe. But remember this. True success isn't about building empires. It's about leaving the world better than you found it. And you, my boy, are doing exactly that. Those words stayed with Jason long after their conversation ended. They reminded him of why he'd embarked on this journey in the first place. To make a difference not just for himself but for others. One fateful morning, Jason received a call that changed everything. Victor had suffered a stroke overnight and was rushed to the hospital. Panic surged through Jason as he raced to be by his side. Emily met him outside the ICU, her face pale with worry. "He's stable now," she assured Jason, clutching his hand tightly. "But the doctors say it's serious. We need to prepare for anything." Jason nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Over the next few days, he stayed close to Emily, supporting her through sleepless nights and tearful moments. The twins, now teenagers, struggled to understand what was happening. Jason spent hours comforting them, sharing memories of Victor's strength and wisdom. When Victor finally regained consciousness, he was weak but coherent. Seeing Jason by his bedside, he managed a faint smile. "You've always been there for us," Victor murmured, his voice barely audible, "even when we didn't deserve it." "Don't talk like that," Jason said firmly, holding back tears. "You saved me just as much as I saved you. Remember that rainy night? If it weren't for you, I'd still be working at the diner, dreaming of a future I thought was impossible." Victor shook his head slightly. "No, Jason. You saved yourself. All I did was give you a chance. You made the most of it, and then some." The room fell silent as Jason processed those words. Victor was right. He had worked hard to create his own opportunities, but none of it would have been possible without the Langstons' belief in him. Over the following weeks, Victor's condition improved slowly but steadily. Though he remained frail, his spirit remained unbroken. With Jason's help, he began delegating more responsibilities to trusted advisors and preparing for a future where the Langston Empire would thrive under new leadership. Eventually, Victor decided it was time to pass the torch. In a heartfelt ceremony attended by family, friends, and colleagues, he announced that Jason would take over as CEO of his company. "This young man has proven himself time and again," Victor declared, his voice steady despite his weakened state. "He embodies the values I hold dear: integrity, innovation, and compassion. Under his guidance, I know our company will continue to change lives for the better." Applause erupted throughout the room, but Jason felt overwhelmed. Taking control of such a massive organization was daunting, especially given its global influence. Yet he accepted the role with gratitude, promising to uphold Victor's vision while pursuing his own dreams of expanding access to education worldwide. As CEO, Jason implemented bold initiatives designed to empower marginalized communities. He partnered with governments to build schools in remote villages, launched scholarship programs for underprivileged students, and invested heavily in renewable energy projects to reduce the environmental impact of manufacturing. His efforts earned widespread praise, cementing his reputation as a leader who prioritized humanity over profit. Years later, as Jason stood on stage accepting an award for humanitarian excellence, he reflected on how far he'd come. From the rainy night in the park to becoming a global icon of philanthropy, his journey had been extraordinary. But what mattered most to him wasn't the recognition or wealth. It was the relationships he'd built along the way. Victor and Emily remained pillars of strength, guiding him through every challenge. Though Victor eventually passed away peacefully, surrounded by loved ones, his legacy lived on through Jason and the countless lives he touched. Emily, now retired, spent her days traveling and volunteering alongside Jason, ensuring that Victor's ideals endured. The twins, meanwhile, grew into remarkable young women. Inspired by Jason's example, they pursued careers in medicine and social work, dedicating themselves to making a difference. Together, the four of them formed an unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of love, trust, and shared purpose. One evening, as Jason walked through the mansion gardens with the twins, he paused to gaze at the stars. "You know," said thoughtfully, Life is funny. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to set off a chain reaction. That rainy night changed everything, for me, for your parents, and for so many others. The twins exchanged knowing smiles. "And now you're changing lives too," one of them said proudly. Jason nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. "We all are. That's what makes life beautiful, the chance to pay it forward." As they stood there together, bathed in moonlight, Jason realized that his story wasn't just about personal success or overcoming adversity. It was about connection, the bonds we forge, the people we inspire, and the ripple effects of even the smallest acts of kindness. In the end, Jason's greatest achievement wasn't the companies he built or the awards he received. It was the lives he transformed, including his own. And as long as he kept giving back, he knew his journey would never truly end.